So spread out.
Man, what a.
Public Works will now be in session. Let the minutes know that all 5 members are present. We're going to go with 20A, 10, and 11, which are all joint referrals. 20A is reclassification of fire department equipment from mechanic to fleet manager. Is there any comment on that, or
Move for approval.
Second.
moved and seconded? Moved by Alderman Lysick, seconded by Alderman Vitale. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 10, resolution authorizing Director of Public Works sign a proposal professional services and all their related documents extending partnerships and other Milwaukee Waterworks wholesale customers for the purpose of paying for the city's share of fees associated with the cooperation of hiring Baxter and Woodman Consulting Engineering and any other appropriate firms, consultants to advance joint concerns and protect the common interest with regards to the Waukesha Water Utilities Construction Authorization, in the amount not to exceed $15,000, as well as authorizing a budget to transfer funds in this initiative.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Lysick, seconded by Alderman Ranky. Gentlemen, just a quick comment.
So what this is, the city took the position with all the other customers that the Milwaukee Waterworks has, could be Greenfield, Shorewood, Wauwatosa, so on and so forth. And we requested to take the intervener type status where we're questioning the payment of the pump station that Milwaukee Waterworks is trying to place on 76 in Oklahoma, as well as the main that's going to be going out to Waukesha. We want to protect our interests, the city of West Dallas, so we as customers will not be charged in pricing down the line or in the future. So this consultant group is working for all the customers, and have this consultant group kind of in our best interest, so.
That's a great idea, really.
Where exactly on 76 in Oklahoma is the pump station going to go?
Southwest.
Yeah, it's the southwest opposite side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that behind the McDonald's?
That's gotta be by McDonald's.
Behind the McDonald's?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Moved by Alderman Lysick, seconded by Alderman Ranky. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 11 is a communication from the Director of Public Works regarding the chiller at the Police Department.
Move it to place on file.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Vitale, seconded by Alderman Lysick to place on file. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you. Yep. I'm going to take 24, 25, and 26 together as a block. They're all resolutions authorizing payments, accepting the work of Zenith Tech, and resolution accepting the work of Green Bay Pipe.
Sure move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Vitale, seconded by Alderman Ranky. Is there any discussion on items number 24, 25, or 26? With that, I move that the resolutions be adopted. It's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carried. Number 27 is a resolution approving an agreement between the city of West Dallas and Greenfield whereby the city of West Dallas will pay its shares of improvements on project on South 116th Street.
Move
So
for
mo-
approval.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Lysick, seconded by Alderman Vitale. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Again, we'll go block 28. Oh, no, we're just going to stick with 28. Resolution accepting the work of Zignagel. I can read the whole thing out if you want me to.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Vitale, seconded by Alderman Stefanski. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 29 will be as amended, and I believe the original resolution came out. Do you want to explain? It was Roman Electric.
Right. We had the wrong numbers. Actually, it had the same numbers as number 28, so we had to put the correct numbers in. The LED lights were only $166,000, not $2 million. So we had the wrong contract. So the LED lights cost $166,000, and we're making final payment.
And there's a whole new jacket, so, and it says as amended, so whoever makes it'll be as amended.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Vitale, seconded by Alderman Stefanski. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Now, I think I can go back to a block. Number 30 is a resolution accepting the work of TMI Coatings. 31 is a resolution to approve the bid of state contractors. We'll stop right there. 30 and 31,
Second.
was it Lysick and Vitale?
Yes.
Any further discussion on those two items? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 32, resolution granting a privilege encroachment major 6301 West Douglas LLC for the property located at 7101/05 West Greenfield Avenue.
Move for approval.
Second.
Alderman Lysick, seconded by Vitale. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. 33 is a resolution to approve the bid of Thomas A. Mason. 34, resolution to approve the bid of D&H Demolition LLC.
Move to approve.
Moved by Alderman Ranky. Who got the second over there? Lysick? Get it right, Lysick. Any further discussion on 33 or 34? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 35, resolution authorizing the city engineer to amend existing agreement with Doan and Associates Incorporated for engineering consultant services related to design and construction phases of emergency generators located at both Fire Station 1 and 3 in the amount not to exceed $11,890.
Move
Move
for
to
approval.
approve.
Whoa, the whole row.
Whoa.
I'm gonna go with Ranky and Stefanski. Moved by Alderman Ranky, seconded by Alderman Stefanski. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 36, resolution relative to accepting proposal of Compass Minerals for furnishing and delivering 4,500 tons of de-icing road salt to the sum of $326,655.
Yeah, it won't be any snow falling this coming winter, so
Let's hope.
I move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Vitale. Who got the second? Lysick?
Yeah. No, Rosalie.
In
Rosalie?
case. In case.
Any further discussion on 36?
I do have a question.
Absolutely.
How many tons did we go through this year?
Approximately 6,000 tons.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Do we have any left?
Yeah, that's what
We
my
do-
second question
we
was gonna
have
be.
some reserve left.
Hard winter.
Do you know about how much we have left?
1,500 ton.
So that's why
approximately.
we're
Yep.
getting 4,500 to round out about
Evens
6,000?
out, Correct.
Okay.
Wow. And I think, you know, sitting back, you just don't realize how much you spend on road salt. Pretty incredible. Moved by Alderman Vitale, seconded by Alderman Ranky. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Number 37, communication from MMSD regarding Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewer District's 2018 comprehensive annual financial report in the
Place
2018.
on file.
Second.
Moved by, thank you, Alderman Lysick, seconded by Alderman Ranky. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Move for adjournment of Public Works.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.
Safety and Development meeting will come to order. All members are present. First item on the agenda is item 38. It's an ordinance to amend various sections of the RMC relative to applicable electrical codes as adopted by the state of Wisconsin.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Ranky, seconded by Vitale. Anybody have any questions or discussion? It's house cleaning to.
It's, yeah,
Set
just
up the
updating,
state code.
the state code sections changed, that's what, 38 and 39 are both just updating to the current code numbers. Nothing changed in.
We don't have any special codes that we do here, right? We follow everything by
Nope,
the
we
state,
just-
right?
Yeah, we have to adopt the state code.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Item 39, basically the same thing.
Move for
Plumbing
approval.
code. Moved by Vitale, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ranky. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Item 40 is a resolution of recognition of the Fairview Park Neighborhood Association.
Move to approve.
Second.
Jablonski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Item 41 is a resolution to approve the development agreement between the City of West Dallas and the developer Lincoln Hospitality Group LLC
Move for approval.
regarding Lincoln Center West Corridor Development Project.
Mr. Chair, thank you. For the committee's benefit, the attachment that was actually put on with the agenda and published last Thursday, there are ongoing negotiations as a result of that, and so I want to go over some of the changes that are proposed today. And if the committee so chooses, you can simply adopt these amendments just by saying that you move to do so. I don't know if Mr. Stiebel has anything else he wants to add, but I'll go through the changes just briefly. Number one, the developer has already actually purchased this property, and so there's no need to reference that, so that's been eliminated. And then the deadline for demolition was blank. They have inserted that September 1st of 2020 is the deadline for demolition of current improvements located in the property. This is the property that the Holiday Inn's going to be going in, and there's a Weir steel building still there. Other changes include the amortization period that was 7 years was increased to 8 years. The minimum assessed value for the completed project was reduced from, I believe, 15.6 million to 12.5 million. And then where there was a blank mill rate, they inserted $28.56 as an example mill rate. The obligations for the municipal revenue obligations expire after, the city's obligation to make those payments are gone after the completion of the 8th year, that tax collection following the issuance date of that municipal revenue obligation. So it basically maxes out at 8 years for the city's obligation to pay back the debt. The developer's payment date that is due was extended to 30 days. It was 15. Just gives them a standard 30-day invoice repayment, which is typical. Also filled in some blanks calculating how the assessed value shortfall payment would be calculated. So if their assessed value is less than 12.5 million, there's a calculation to determine what makeup payment is necessary to essentially cover whatever it's lacking. So if it's only $11 million and not 12.5 million, they'd have to pay a certain percentage of that $1.5 million difference to cover any type of debt service costs that the city would have. The only issue that I pointed out that wasn't revised to my satisfaction, but is still something for the committee to consider, was there was a 5-year window that essentially required profit sharing or calculations at that point in time. That was changed so that it only occurs upon the sale of the project to a third party or if the project is refinanced. Theoretically, that means that this business could continue to operate in a way where that would never trigger. It was supposed to trigger at 5 years in an original draft, but the developer never agreed to that. So that is the only part that is at least of some interest to my office, and if it is to the committees as well. The internal rate of return calculation basically says that if it's above 17.5% rather than 15%. So it increases slightly from the 15% that was presented to 17.5%. Then the share of any profits over that 17.5% are going to be 30% from 50%, which was originally requested. So essentially, those two changes reduce a portion of what the city would get in profit sharing if the project turns out to be highly profitable. But there still is money coming back if it becomes highly profitable to some extent. And then there were some developer obligations that I requested to be put back in that were put back in. Things like not providing reports and not disclosing financials, which we would require, and not maintaining obligations beyond a certain period. Those were all put back in. So that's those are a summary of changes to what was attached to the agenda and online as of Thursday.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Vitale.
Yeah, Kel, say what occurred after the 8 years agreement, they failed to achieve their payments, the full payments.
The city's obligation to make any payments would be done. So at that point in time, it'd be on the developer.
All right.
We're still projecting that it's going to end in 7 years. The
Okay.
developer needs an extra year for a little fluff, and was what we
Alright.
gave him. We wanted to be,
Chair.
we wanted to be fair to everybody.
Sure.
Person Reinke.
What is the city's obligation, the portion of money that we're paying to them?
The city has no legal, financial obligation.
Right,
The developer is going to borrow the money themselves. What we are doing is giving them access to tax increment financing, the incremental increase in property taxes to pay back that 1.45 million. So if he doesn't by the end of the 8th year, he's out. The city, I think more importantly, the developer's obligation continues for the life of the TIF district, which we haven't had in the past, which is a very strong future for us.
okay.
And the chair would entertain a motion to approve this as amended, with the, this is from, John Steeble? No, Richard Donner? Is that correct?
Yes, Attorney Rick Donner was the attorney who had drafted the agreement and represented the city in this matter, so the update from him.
Okay. So the chair would entertain a motion to approve item 41 as amended according to the letter from Richard Donner dated August 6th at 1:21 PM.
Second.
We need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Excuse me,
By
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Vitale. Is there a
Wait.
second?
There's a, that was, that summary of the existing, what we had in the jacket. The email from Attorney Donner dated today at 6:21 has the amendments in it. That City Attorney Kale was just going through.
Let me take a look at that, Mr. Chair.
August 6th, 1:21, the John Steeble. Hi, John, here are the changes.
He was doing,
And you got
This
one from Brett Rogie. That was
See, it was this
6:12.
got it.
This one.
Okay,
So
we have
who's
the
right?
document.
This is
That's
for
why I
the
want to make
TIF.
sure we have the right document.
The right document?
Which one's right?
Yeah, the tips they're making.
Both,
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
Because there's a,
So the, on the document, it was originally drafted at 1:21 PM, but then forwarded at 6:01. That's where the two times are coming into
He
play.
technically made some changes to,
yeah, I saw that. He's got
to the
another,
language at 6:21 that
6:21. Okay, so it's been moved by Alderman Vitale. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Barzak. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. This in here. Item 41A and 41B, this is a communication from the downtown bid and the resolution declaring Woods and Wings scheduled for September 14th between 1 PM and 5 PM as community event. A motion
So
for-
moved.
Move to approve.
Place
Chair.
41 on file.
Yes.
Alderman Vitale and seconded by Reinke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 42 is a presentation on new electric scooter law and local regulatory options.
Mr.
Attorney Decker.
Mr. Chair, thank you. If you look at the screens here, we've got a brief presentation to sort of explain what happened here. 2019 Wisconsin Act 11 was signed last month, and it authorized the use of electric scooters. So the first step, obviously, is what is this thing? By definition, it's anything under 100 pounds that has handlebars and electric motor, powered by human power and electric motor, with a max speed of 20 miles an hour on a level surface. You'll see the picture of an example of what an electric scooter is. This is just one type, but they come in many forms, but that is the general type of what you're looking at. Specifically excluded from this definition are these objects. From upper left clockwise, it's an electric bike, a motorcycle, what's called an electric personal assistive device, or a Segway on the bottom right-hand side, then a moped, and then a motor bicycle. Those are all excluded, so none of these would count under the new electric scooter law. Electric scooters are relatively inexpensive compared to other modes of transportation. You can see there's a few of those. I just pulled example prices from Amazon for a few different varieties, and I anticipate that there'll be more manufacturers coming. On top of that, there are ride-sharing companies. You may have seen them in the news. They were in Milwaukee last summer, and they were removed under some litigation that I started. Now that the state law has been enacted, and now they are actually vehicles that can be operated on highways. Last year they weren't, but Bird and Lime are the two largest, and then there's also Lyft has gotten into the game, and Uber has gotten into the game with Jump, as well as a few other companies around the country. So basically what it allows people to do is use a smartphone to find one of these on the street, activate it, drive it a certain amount of distance, and then drop it off. That's generally how that works. So, which laws changed in Act 11? Like I said prior, you could not register it, and it was not specifically exempted from being a motor vehicle, and so because it was a motor vehicle, it had to have a federal stamp that it had turn signals, brake lights, and other safety features, which it did not have, and so therefore is illegal to operate anywhere in the state. After Act 11, they are now pulled out of the definition of motor vehicle, and they're made a separate object, much like a bicycle or a Segway. And so they are treated essentially the same as bicycles for regulation and EMPDs for their rights on the road. And so EPAMD is a Segway. It's just an abbreviation used in the state law. So at the end of the day, what are our options? The issues that other communities have come across when electric scooters come to town include motorist and rider issues. Number one, if you're a driver of a car on the road, a lot of them don't know how to handle an electric scooter because they travel quite quickly. People tend to veer in and out of lanes with them and might not be necessarily acting responsibly. But just so everyone who knows, drivers should treat them like bicycles. They're supposed to be operated like bicycles, and they have the same rules and duties as bicycles. So signaling turns, braking at stop signs, things like that. They have to do all those things. So motorists should treat them like that. The other issue is a lot of riders are riding these things for the first time in their lives this year or were last year. And so although every manufacturer of these things recommends wearing a helmet, very few people do. There have been some significant injuries and deaths as a result of it around the country. And riders tend to use the sidewalk. Now, at this point in time, the state law has authorized the use of a sidewalk by a electric scooter rider, but as you see in the next slide, the city has an option to deal with that. And then riders of these devices are required to follow traffic laws, and some of them don't realize that. So stopping at stop signs, yielding right of way, and things like that, they have to follow those laws. The other final issue is with the rental companies. They've gained a ton of capital investment from hundreds of millions of dollars, and so they tend to buy a lot of these things, dump them in an area, hope for a high volume to recoup. But at the end of the day, these things are pretty inexpensive to construct, and a lot of them are found in the bottoms of rivers or in piles and heaps at various locations. And at least until now, companies have not been necessarily responsible in removing those items. So we'll see in the future if this changes now that the state has authorized it. But that is one area of concern when it comes to the rental companies. If someone buys one for themselves, they're much more likely to take care of it. But if there's just one laying on the street, it might be fun to take that and throw it on someone's roof. So just something to be aware of that does happen in other communities that have used these devices. Final slide is basically what do you want to do about it? So the first step is the state law does allow you to regulate the rental and operation of the scooters in a manner that's consistent with bicycles. Although it's not clear in the state law, one of those things is bicycles can be required to be registered. And so if there's an interest in requiring the registration of every e-scooter or electric scooter, I would consider that and do a little more research to see if we could do that. But that was one aspect of the regulation that there might be an interest in to make sure we can at least keep tabs on how many are in the city, or at least registered to the city. The second option, you can you can exclude these scooters from any roads where the speed limit is more than 25 miles an hour. That's for safety reasons. If vehicles are traveling 30 miles an hour or faster, these things are limited to 25. The difference in speed can be dangerous, so the city could do something and restrict their operation on those higher speed roads. You can also, as I alluded to before, restrict the operation on sidewalks or bicycle ways, if you so choose. That would then mean that any riders would have to go to the roadway and operate just like a bicycle would on the right-hand side, but on the road. And it's important to note that if you do nothing, then they are allowed to ride on the sidewalk. Then the next one is you can do any type of requirements, limitations on parking. Because rental companies might come to town to try to promote this, the way it works is there is no designated parking zone for these things. You ride them as far as you want to go, and then you just leave it there. And so if it's a very high volume area or there's used a lot, and if everyone's going to the same concert or the same event, you might end up with a large pile of them in that location, and it could actually start blocking the right-of-way. It could cause a lot of visual clutter. So there is an option to at least enact some sort of parking saying where these things must be left. The final thing relates to that rental of electric scooters. The companies that come in to do that rental, you can actually restrict or even prohibit that short-term commercial rental if the city wants to do so. Right now, they would be allowed to come in and operate unless the city does something to change that. So that's all I've got for electric scooters, and I'm open to any discussion or thoughts from the committee to help draft any legislation you'd be interested in.
From my perspective, I would say whole list of what you've got there.
Mr. Chairman, my first question is, we bring this in, who's liable for any injuries that happen with these scooters?
Much like any manufacturer of a vehicle, the city would not face any liability from it because it's a right-of-way issue. And so there's nothing the city would be liable for, whether taking action or not taking action in this case. So your decision will not have an impact on the city's bottom line. As far as who's liable in an accident, that's actually being litigated right now for the very first time in a few states. A young woman died in an accident on an electric scooter. I believe it was in one of the southern states, and her estate has sued, I believe, the manufacturer of it and the other person involved in that accident. But as far as liabilities, there's really no good answer on that one right now. I just know that from the city's perspective, it would be an issue with, much like if there's a car accident in the city, there's no liability for the city because of a car accident.
Okay.
Let me understand, Attorney, if we do nothing, they can go and ride all over the streets and basically do whatever they want, correct?
If you do nothing, they can operate on any streets in the city. They can operate on the sidewalk in the city. The rental companies can show up with as many electric scooters as they want and drop them off in the city. And yeah, that's basically what I'd see.
My
Mr. Chair.
suggestion would be that we go with the whole ball of wax and come back with something for us, and if the council chooses to, whittle it down a little bit.
Concur.
Modify it, we can do that.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Vitale.
Yeah, Cal, the questions that I found out actually in the last couple of days in reference of those electric scooters, they already, I've been seeing them shooting down the alleys, which over at least 20 or over, and to me, so I don't know if it would be easy to kind of apply some restrictions in reference of the alley. I know there's cars that go 30 miles per hour in some of the alleys sometime I've seen, but the scooter now I've been noticing kids, not just 10 years old, I see them 14, 15, 17 years old kids using it, go through the alley, on the east end. And to me, that's something that's kind of a concern, really, to kind of look into it just as well, because those things are dangerous. I don't care what anybody says. Those things are dangerous.
Alderperson Ranky.
There'll be those that don't follow the rules. What is the recourse then for the city?
From a rider's perspective, if the rider's not following traffic laws, they can be cited much like a bicycle rider. So, although people don't realize this, if you see a bicycle go through a four-way stop sign, they can technically be issued a ticket for failure to stop for a stop sign. It's a 0-point offense. It's usually in the high 70s, low $80, something like that. A similar type of ticket would be issued to someone on one of these who violates a traffic law.
Will that be included?
But by state law, they already
Oh, by
are.
state law.
By state law, the traffic code applies to them for those purposes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Sikansky.
All right, so Alderperson Ranky brought up a good point about traffic laws and, and them getting what kind of recourse we have. I already see on a regular basis, we do not enforce laws on bicycle riders. And I see bicycle riders go through stoplights, stop signs all the time. What can we do as at the city level to have the police department start enforcing these things along with stuff with the scooters too, if we decide to implement them?
That's going to be a police resource issue, so to the chief's directive, the officers will do what the department considers to be where they want to allocate resources. So I'd encourage you to talk to police command staff and the Police and Fire Commission, or FBC.
Okay, thank you.
I would recommend when you draw this up, that we put in a fine structure for anyone that leaves one of these rental units around, and that is to be collected from the rental company. Alderman Rowe.
Just got in the tail end of this, I apologize, but it seems though Chief Bosch is here. Would that be more of a community service officer enforcement rather than a patrol? Or is it who's ever available?
It would be an issue of who's ever available, but it does come down to resources in terms of whether or not we have the ability to. So we're enforcing traffic laws for the vehicles that are out there, and so if we have the ability to, we certainly can. It's just a question of how often we'd be able to do it. But it wouldn't be any specific individual, it would be all of the patrol officers' responsibility.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, could we use the parking checker, or do they not have those rights to do that?
They can issue limited citations. I don't know that they can issue, the parking checkers, I don't believe they can issue moving violations.
Okay.
Okay, for the rest of the council that came in late, the recommendation is for the city attorney's office to draft an ordinance incorporating all of the restrictions that he has up on the board, so that we can start addressing this, and then we can act on that when it comes before us, and if we want to modify it, we can modify it.
Mr. Chair, if I could?
Yeah.
I see we talk about bicycle ways, allowing them on sidewalks and a bicycle way by default. I don't know if you covered this, but bicycles are allowed to ride on the city streets in West Dallas, which is really not typical for a city of our size, except for in the downtown. And I would advocate for not allowing scooters to be ridden in the C1 in the downtown district on our sidewalk, just the same as we have a bicycle and skateboard and roller skating.
Saying no sidewalk.
No sidewalks
we're saying
citywide,
no
that's what it
sidewalks
should be,
anywhere.
Citywide, and not
Okay,
just,
thank you.
And one point of clarification, with the rental companies, there are other cities who've come up with regulatory schemes to allow it. Would you rather that I come back with a version of regulatory schemes, or just simply prohibit rental companies from operating?
I would say prohibit it. To be honest, I don't think we're gonna have a big demand for scooters here in West Dallas. Maybe we will. I mean, I view those as more for the downtown business district in Milwaukee, where someone wants to go from point A to point B, 6 blocks away and get there in a hurry. I mean, we may get it here. If we get it here, we can address it at that time, but right now I'd say prohibit it.
Mr. Chairman,
Alderman Savansky?
does the city get any kind of revenue off of this?
No, not by default. The only way I could think of any revenue coming in is if you chose to require the registration of electric scooters, then could charge a registration fee for those scooters. That's the only way I could see any revenue coming in.
And would that also then keep us from being liable then too, or if we do that, go that route, would we be liable in any way for injuries?
No, because people can register their bicycles right now if they want to, and there's no liability imposed upon a regulatory agency for simply accepting information.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, yeah, the questions of the restrict the commercial rental or electric scooters, I believe that we could just keep that, I mean, why we should wait until, say, a year from now? I think it should be on the books, on city ordinance, if goes through, should be applied now, as long as we're working on this. I mean, I don't like to wait another year or 6 months, and then
We don't have anybody proposing to give us a rental agreement.
Yeah, but still, it's nice to have it on the books. I mean, we can still do that.
My understanding is I haven't heard anyone say anything about a regulatory scheme, and the only thing I've heard so far is a ordinance prohibiting a rental company so far.
Right. Here's mine.
Kayla, you mentioned that their company had reached out to me and that you're gonna be meeting with them.
I did not mention that, but I didn't know if,
Phone call, must've been Monday, and I called him back today and I just said, let's wait till after State Fair, and he's gonna call me back on Mondays. And he wanted to invite anybody and everybody who would be willing. I just mentioned I'd like to bring the city attorney, possibly the city administrator, even though she doesn't know it yet. So I don't know if you wanna try to have that meeting within this process to get some feedback from the company, or?
I would just as soon go through with prohibiting it initially, to let them know that we're serious about this.
Yes.
And give us, if we do decide to go into an agreement with them, we can have some discussions with them, and I think then the onus is on them to make us happy.
So that, on that
Gives us
note,
more negotiating power for them to do something.
then on that note, then, Mr. Chair, if any of you want to be at that meeting with them, please let me know if we have to notice it or,
Mr. Chair, I guess I'm curious. I think we're looking at two problems here, is the use of them in general on our streets, and then the parking of them randomly. Because you can buy these yourself right now, and you can own one, and I actually have one. But you don't, I don't just leave it on the street, because it's mine, you know.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier.
Okay, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that, that we're,
Yeah,
so,
oh, yeah, we're
okay, yeah, yeah.
and that's why, everything, we get the restrictions on.
On where they can be used, and then where they can be parked.
And then we talk, do we want to
Where
go
would-
into rental thing, and have them all over the city or not? And that's where, I'm saying we start out with the prohibited, and if we end up where we want them, we can always modify it.
And by way of information, we already have Bubbler Bikeshare in West Dallas, and Bubbler this week just introduced electric Bubbler bikes in some of their downtown stations.
And those aren't regulated, are they?
so that,
They're regular, the same as a bicycle.
Right.
my assumption is they're electric bicycles, not electric scooters.
Yeah, but the point is, that may actually, if that expands, if it takes hold, and the electric bike takes hold in the market, it's a similar product and a similar price point,
Yeah, overtake.
may overtake the scooters. Yeah, we'll see.
Is there a motion to place 42 on file?
I am also moved.
Shut up.
Moved by Sikansky, seconded by Vitale. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 43 is discussion related to potential ordinance amendment to Chapter 12 of the RMC relating to nominal price retail stores.
Mr. Chair?
Hey, Decker.
This was a request that came in from Alderman Lysak to at least get a discussion going on whether there was any interest in the council in regulating what are commonly known as dollar stores. Essentially, any type of store where they offer relatively inexpensive merchandise for a relatively consistent price, or at least market their items in that manner. So this is more of an opportunity to hear from the committee as to whether this is something that the council's interested in regulating from a zoning perspective. The options are you could do nothing, and then the zoning code as is will just certainly treat them as a regular store, a retail store. But if there's more interest in treating them more specifically, you could potentially prohibit them in specific zones. You could specifically permit them in specific zones, and you could create a limited type of use where they couldn't be located within a certain proximity of an existing one. If you choose any of those zoning regulations, any existing stores would be legal non-conforming uses and continue to be in their current location, but any new stores would be subject to the new regulations. I've used the term nominal price retail store as a way to just describe it, but in essence, it would be what most people know as a dollar store.
I guess so. Yeah, this kind of comes to an example of a store that I'm hearing rumors of going into a location in a residential kind of area. The Family Video. I'm hearing there's potential of Dollar General going in there. Would that fall under this potential of us being able to regulate it?
given the notice and publication requirements, I don't know if that store is gonna be moving in before it would be even legally possible to change the zoning code. But yes, that would be the type of store that would be regulated if there was an ordinance passed restricting this type of store.
Okay.
And it would be depending upon what zones you choose to regulate it in and if you develop a proximity type of provision.
I'd prefer to see these in kind of mall areas than residential areas. That's just my thought.
So is this something that the committee would like the attorney to look into and to come back to us with his thoughts on it and suggestions? I brought it up because there is a proliferation of dollar stores now all over the state, all over the country. They're very popular. We have one that's across the street from my district. It's in the second district on Lincoln Avenue. That has been a thorn in our side for a good number of years. There was a hardware store years ago. There was never any complaints when it was a hardware store. Now it's a dollar store. There's all kinds of problems. I know, Mayor, you came up with the request to introduce an ordinance for the cameras in stores at the request of the police department because they have so much shoplifting and things there. So this is an effort to regulate these more stringently and prohibiting them. You know, if you go past that store, there's junk all over the place all the time. Carts out in front on the sidewalk. It's not a very well-handled store.
It's a mess.
Mr. Chair. You're higher up, you're a mayor.
Yeah, but you're on the committee.
No, I'm not.
Wait. Mr. Chair, I guess two things I just wanted to throw in for the sake of discussion. One is, I feel like a lounge singer. One is, there was an article in the Journal Sentinel, I believe, recently about how a lot of the smaller communities are really finding these stores going in and killing the mom and pop shops in those communities. Now, I realize we're not a small community, but we do have a lot of independent, locally owned businesses like, you know, it used to be Medeki's Century for the longest time, Rapina's, the Health Hut, and a lot of these come in and they're selling things so cheap that they're really hurting the mom and pop stores. And then that was followed up by an article I came across on a national news outlet that talked about what other cities across the country are doing to try to regulate these. Some of their issues also involved just the ability to get healthy foods. So some of these dollar stores are responding to that by trying to put in a produce section, a small produce section in their shops. But it's really just, they don't, I mean, I realize people love a bargain, and I realize we're in the greater Milwaukee area and we love a bargain. But it's really, I think, hurting our business climate at the expense of a lot of the independent stores that make our city unique.
I think us keeping those type of things out of here as much as we can is going to help the small mom and pop shops, which West Dallas is a community that, in my opinion, is a community that thrives on small businesses.
Mr. Chair? Can I go now, Mayor?
Yeah, you're up.
I agree with Alderman Lysak fully. They always just have garbage and litter all over the place. And also, in regards to the one that you're talking about, and I'm aware of, it gets, I've talked to Chief Mitchell about this, it gets hit a lot because of the large amounts of cash. Can we, I didn't even know how you would attack that. But they're just targets, and he came out and said it. They're just rich with cash.
Well, now you just advertised it.
Now that you put it on TV.
Yeah.
Everybody on TV that they're a target.
How many dollar stores do we currently
Well, then we
have?
should assign some squads right now to go hang out by that one.
We have one on Highway 100,
We
right?
have one on Highway 100, and
talking
it's
about
well
that.
That one's
run.
safe.
And we have
I mean,
And it's
Five
not
Below,
junky.
Dollar General,
Dollar Tree
Dollar
over here.
Tree.
Okay.
By the Yellow Chammers.
So there are good dollar stores.
I'm not saying they're all bad,
No, they're not all bad.
but,
No.
I mean, it's just,
We don't want to be overwhelmed with them.
But do we need a distance requirement then,
Miss-
if there's proliferation?
that's
Mr.
up
Chairman?
to the-
That's what I'm talking about, maybe doing.
that's up to the committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think to expedite this, I think everybody in this room is agreeing that I think we should look into this and move it forward, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want a motion to
Well,
place on file, or is it?
Really, it just, we we're just gonna leave this, we can attach the ordinance with it or whatever.
This was a discussion item, I understand, so I will just bring a new item with through the clerk's office.
All right,
Okay.
so no action needed.
No action
No.
needed.
If you could just place it on file so we get
Want
rid
to
of the
place it
paper.
on file?
Move the place on file.
Yeah.
To place
Second.
on file.
Moved by Barzak, seconded by.
Let's move on.
Everybody all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Item 44 is ordinance to amend various sections of the RMC relative to motor vehicle and small engine repair in residential areas as amended.
Mr. Chair?
If you would, please.
The version that was presented last time, meetings ago, remains as is, allowing motor vehicle repair in residential areas with the restrictions that were proposed last time. In addition, based on the discussions that the committee had, I'm suggesting 2 additional regulations. One essentially changes the noise ordinance to prohibit working on motor vehicles with equipment or tools to create noise more than 2 times a week. So you're allowed basically twice in a 7-day period to use equipment. If it's going all week long, then a person could be cited under that 7035 ordinance, which is the noise ordinance. So that was one thing I heard from the committee last time that I attempted to address, that we wanted to allow it, but not so much that it becomes a 5-day-a-week type activity. And then a new part essentially prohibiting abandoned vehicle parts. So if someone's going to be leaving parts in anywhere outside of a building in a residential area, that then would allow them to be cited for it within 24 hours, and then that part could be removed after 72 more hours, and then treated as abandoned property at that point in time. So it's a way to remove outdoor storage of vehicle parts and a way to limit the amount of noise generated by equipment and tools working on vehicles to twice a week. If there's any additional regulations, I can hear those as well, but that's the proposal.
Clarify that, Mr. Chair. You said working, I mean, the homeowner will be able to work in his garage twice a week?
Twice a week if it's been generating noise outside of that.
If it's making noise.
If it make noise, I understand
It
that.
doesn't make noise,
So we do have an ordinance in place already, 10 PM. I mean, it can be anything, within this city, so we have an ordinance in place already. So if it causes problem twice a week, I mean, noises, so we can still, stop them from, it's a violation, right, if you continue to.
Under the version proposed, it would be, for example, working during daytime hours, you still could only do it twice a week in a residential zone.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Stefanski.
I think that 2-day thing is kind of, I don't know, it seems a little odd, because how is somebody gonna determine, okay, well, today I'm gonna work for, 5 hours on a vehicle, make noise, and now tomorrow I can't, but then the next day I can. If they're not, if they're within the noise ordinance times, they should be able to make noise whenever they want, as long as it's following our noise ordinance. I can't go with this 2 days limitation, it just doesn't fly.
Well, I think, Alderman Stefanski, the issue comes up where if you have a neighbor that's doing body work on his vehicle, and he's doing it for himself and his buddies, and, they're making noise every day of the week, this is what we want to prevent. We're not looking at getting the guy that's working on his car, or his kid's car, or, anything like that. Usually when you're working on a car, you're putting brakes on or something, you're only gonna be doing that in a couple of days. If you're doing it for a side job for a living, you're gonna be doing it virtually every day of the week.
I thought, though, the last version of this was that we agreed on that it had to be the owner of the home's car or a relative of the owner of the home's car that they could be working on to avoid it becoming a side business or working on other people's cars.
That provision is still included. It says, the original version said the item being repaired must be owned by the occupant of the home or a family member.
But then we went further than that because it isn't always cars. He may be working on a boat, he may be working on cabinets, building a rec room and making cabinets in his garage, or doing it as a side job for people, running a little home repair business out of his house. And pounding with hammers, every day of the week, you know, we just looked at a way to control the situation of somebody using their garage to make noise all the time and irritating their neighbors. So this is a way to control it.
Mr. Chairman, right now on West Dallas, buy, sell, trade, mobile mechanic, brakes, $35, tune-ups, 40, alternators, 45, starters, 45, wheel bearings, 50, drive axles, 50, struts, 75, water pumps, 75, etc. Message me, certified mechanic, will come to your house to work anytime, any night. Yeah, you're welcome. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mr.
It's
Chair,
not broke.
we designated time, didn't we? They could work?
Well,
Well, it's a noise ordinance.
Yeah.
the,
What
ba-
was-
based on the discussions last time, I proposed something of 2 days per week, just trying to feel out the committee to decide where to start. If there's an interest in changing that to a different time, that's entirely the committee's
No, I meant,
prerogative.
time.
This
Till
is-
9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? What did we designate?
The normal quiet hours would still be in place, starting at 10 PM for everything. This would be just an additional regulation for during the daytime hours.
Just daytime? Thank you.
What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chair? You know, in general, it feels kind of silly that we're even doing this the way that we're doing it. Again, I think we should regulate this through our nuisance ordinances, which is, you know, regulate the noise, you know, the revving of an engine. You know, consider that to be a nuisance thing. Regulate the exhaust, things like that. But, I mean, to go to this 2-day per week thing, that's kind of silly. To stick it only in the garage, I mean, maybe people want to repair the fiberglass on their boat on their driveway. You know, to me, we're almost overly stringent now, but for good reason. But could we take some of those good reasons and just put it into our other ordinances that have to do with nuisances? I agree with you, 2 days a week. Why 2 days? Why not a maximum of 5 days in a month? Or, I mean, it's just kind of random. I have a feeling there's another alder person sitting next to me who's going to vote against it for a different reason. I'm going to vote against it. Because the other alder person next to me, and if I'm mischaracterizing this, you know, I apologize, says what we have now works, don't do anything with it. And I'm going the opposite way and saying this is just getting ridiculous. I think we should get rid of this, allow people to work on their vehicles, but regulate, again, the noise, the exhaust, and things like that. The enforcement of this it's hard to get enforcement on things now. And I don't know if any other older people get kind of disappointed with the enforcement.
You can't work on your car in the garage.
And Mr. Chair, I understand, you can't do any work in your garage, can't do anything. And I understand the idea that this is a step in the right direction, but what I'm saying is it doesn't go far enough. They're both kind of, what we have now is silly, and I think this is silly. I think we should work on regulating the circumstances that come out of the act of working on a vehicle. But, you know, if a person wants to, you know, I've got a pop-up camper. If I want to take it and for the week I want to recaulk the outside, and hopefully it doesn't take me a week, but, you know, or my grandfather, he didn't will it to me, he hasn't passed. He gave me his old fishing boat, and, you know, I spent a week and I sanded down all the steel, because it was a steel frame on it, and put it all back together. I mean, it's just kind of a silly law that we have, and I don't think this is going far enough.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair.
I want to make sure I'm getting what you're getting, where you're going. You're basically saying we should stick with letting people work on their cars, work on their vehicles, follow the noise ordinances, but regulate that they're not doing business like you just read off. That's the way, yes, okay. I wanted to make sure I was on the same page, okay.
Yeah, realistically, you know, I mean, I've talked for myself, my district, you know, for 31 years, in all fairness, I had only two complaints, one on 57 Rough National. The guy was doing business on a daily basis. So that part was ceased. So, and somebody else around 58 an orchard in that area. So what I'm saying, it never really been an issue. I mean, never been really an issue. So it's been an issue, by Alderman Barsack neighbors, which they've been continuously doing service for other people, which I think that should be seized. That's another thing. But in overall, really, how many of us really get complaints from citizens or neighbors that people works on their cars? I'm not going to, start regulating them. Really, that's what I said in the previous meeting. How many things really occurs, for many years? I'm talking about years, and not just 6 months ago. How many complaints really I'm getting from neighbors because the guy's making noise at 5 o'clock? None, really. In all fairness, none. I mean, let's be straightforward.
Alderman Haas.
Yeah, and Alderman Vitale, just to follow up to Alderman Vitale's comment, you're talking about only just the 2 examples that you've experienced. Our police department has enforced this. I have examples, real-world examples of folks that have been told by the police department that they can't work on their vehicle, because that is what our ordinance says. Even though we have auto parts stores, Alderman Weigel mentioned the other day, our public works yard accepts motor oil, which must be illegally begotten.
Where's it coming from? We're stealing from you.
Yes. Right. And it just goes to what I've said and told this council before. This is America. We should have the right to be able, within limitations, within reason, whatever reasons and limitations this body wants to make, you should be able to work on your vehicle at your own.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yes, I agree.
And under the present ordinance, we can't. Now, Alderman Barzak, I understand your concerns. You have someone in your district that is apparently continually violating that, but we've got the ordinances on the books. I don't know why building inspection isn't able to take care of it then. They should be able to.
What happens in a case like this is they shut their door, they don't work on it for 2 months, they start working on it again, and then we call it in, they shut their door, they don't work on it, and they open their door and they start working on it again, or they're working on it inside the garage. So it's like, I have another example with somebody that parks their car on the lawn. We've written up this address probably 10 times. They wait 2 months, and they start parking again till somebody complains. They take it off, they put it back on. We will never write that ticket. And the same thing with, I'll bring up no parking on Theater Trekker Drive. It's no parking, no stopping, no waiting. There has never been a ticket issued. They'll drive right by, and they won't ticket them. So you can put the ordinance in, and all you're gonna do is open the floodgates to people working on cars, and I mean working on cars.
They're doing it all
It's
now.
gonna, yeah, but we can regulate it. If we catch them, we have something to stop them. It's not broke, don't fix it. Like Alderman Vitale said, with the exception of this one character, I don't think I've gotten 5 calls in 31 years. And when it has been a call, it's been major. They've been doing something where they're towing cars in and working on them or whatever.
Well,
You're gonna create a monster, is what you're gonna do.
We have a complaint system online now where they don't even have to call you, Alderman Barzak. You may not
Correct.
be aware
Yep.
that it's going on.
Yeah, we get the emails on every single one.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is you're gonna create a monster here. Just like the parking of the cars, just like the fire pits.
I'd like to see it legal for people to work on their cars. I don't want someone
Too, but
worried
I don't know
about
how to regulate it.
doing something. I think this regulates it. Now, you can argue about the 2 days, maybe it should be 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, something. I mean, I don't have any problem with that, but I do agree with Alderman Haas. This should be a basic right. If you wanna work on something in your driveway or your garage, you should be able to do it within reason.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Again, I don't disagree with it. I just disagree with sort of the way it's being laid out. I think people should have, if you're a hobbyist, right, and you got a vehicle and you want to refurbish your dad's old whatever car you can come up with, and you want time to work on it, I mean, be limited 2 days a week in your garage to work on, something that may be a hobby of yours or I think we should allow more of that sort of activity. And so, again, I think we should be regulating the exhaust, the noise, the abandoned vehicle parts, no exterior storage of parts at all. And that's something that we can easily do, and that's all in there. But what I'm saying is I think we should allow people to also work in their driveway if they want to change their oil change one day. And maybe what we do is we say, working in your driveway itself, we can limit, how long you're able to do that in a week. But if a person wants to work, again, on a hobby car in their garage, 365 days a year, I think they should have the ability to do that.
They should, and they probably, but
And they probably will, so I have it on the books.
they're not gonna be making noise, so if they were, their neighbor's gonna be complaining and say, hey, you can't be running, air hammers, chisels, tearing out body work and redoing stuff without irritating your neighbors. So what you're talking about is the hobby guy that's doing some Bondo work, he's working on an engine, that's not making a lot of noise usually. I mean, there may be a little noise once in a while, but that's not a noisy type of function.
And I agree, but then to say you can only do it 2 days a week.
Well, like I said, I'm open to changing that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the 2 days a week if you're gonna be doing the work on your driveway. I mean, you shouldn't be,
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, okay.
Oh, Mr. Fonskey.
if we're gonna, the whole thing with the noise and that is the issue, why don't we just enforce the noise ordinance during the times? Because if it's during
Because
the day,
it's only at night.
10 PM start.
right,
This can be irritating during the day. If you had somebody, especially if you live on the eastern half of town, which you do, homes are closer together, garages are, in my neighborhood, we have attached garages, and if my neighbor was working on his driveway, that's about 3 feet from, or 5 feet from a bedroom window.
I mean, a good example is snow blowers. 5 o'clock in the morning, people are getting up to go to work, and I hear snow blowers firing up. That's not inside the noise ordinance.
No,
I don't call and report people because they gotta get.
They gotta get to
They
work.
gotta get to work.
Everybody understands that, though.
Yeah.
And they'll realize this is a one-shot deal, it's one day, or 5 days of winter, or
And we
whatever
give you
it is.
24 hours to clear your
Yeah,
snow.
so you gotta do it. I mean, yeah. Nobody's out there mowing their lawn at 4 in the morning.
No. I know people that do it at 7 in the morning.
So, Mr. Chair, we can make an amendment on
Supposed to
that.
do it till
So
nine.
what's your pleasure? You wanna redo this
The
again?
perks come at 7 though.
I don't know.
I have painted an oil canvas that can be repainted, so
Yeah.
let me know.
You want another shot at it?
A little direction as to where to go, because I've heard actually to go both ways, the opposite way so far.
Mr. Chair, if we could offer a little more freedom of thought for you, what we're trying to regulate, if the committee chair and others would agree here, we're trying to regulate exhaust, we're trying to regulate noise, we're trying to regulate ensuring that people aren't running businesses out of their homes. We want to make sure there aren't abandoned vehicle parts and exterior storage. Again, we want to regulate the
2 days.
the potential outcomes of poor practice of someone working on their vehicle, not necessarily the idea of someone working on their vehicle. So working within that very loose construct, do you think you'd be able to put something together, either with this or via a series of ordinance changes? Maybe there's something in the noise ordinance that has to get changed, something in the other nuisance ordinance. Maybe it's all nuisance ordinances altogether that get changed and this one just gets struck. Is that too loose, or does that give you a good canvas for that oil?
Happy to take another shot at it.
Can we exclude it at 2 days? Exclude it 2 days.
I think you want to regulate is,
Yeah, let it.
I kind of disagree with Tom on this one, is the guy that goes in and he gets Grandpa's car and he completely rebuilds it, takes all the fenders off, takes things off, and he works on it every single night till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And he's working, I mean, if I had that neighbor, I think I'd go crazy with, lights on in the garage, and he's working on it every single night, every weekend, for, maybe a year, 6 months, don't know what it takes. I wouldn't want to live next to that person.
Okay, moving on. Item 45 is an ordinance to amend various subsections of the downtown signage ordinance relative to updating definitions, type of prohibited signs, updates to changeable copy signs, sections with the downtown West Dallas sign ordinance.
Move to approve.
Well, I'm not so sure. Well, okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this.
Mr. Chairman?
I have reservations about this. I want to hear more details. I see it's as amended on here. What were the amendments?
Isn't that why we seconded to move it into discussion, though?
No, we can have discussion. That's okay. That's fine.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't the one who amended this one, but I believe this was,
The sticker maybe got
oh,
pushed here from a different one. I'm looking at the plan as amended. This isn't the plan.
That's the
That's
next
not the
item.
right sticker.
yeah, so I think this is the original one that the Plan Commission originally recommended to not pass.
Not pass, correct. And, you know,
Mr. Chair, if I could ask to hold this,
yeah.
because I was gonna get together with the bid, but their vacation, their
Ah,
staff's,
Yeah, you were gonna bring in some
yes,
examples.
and I have not had time to do that.
Okay, fine, so
So-
hold this. Item 45 will
withdraw?
be held. Yeah.
Must
you
we
withdraw?
withdraw?
Okay, thank you. Item 46 is a resolution designating proposed boundaries and approving a project plan for TIF number 17. That's the Lincoln West Corridor. Is there a motion for approval?
Shall move, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Vitale, seconded by Ranky. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to make one comment that we did change one item in the plan, or several items, and that was just in the base value of the properties. From the 2018 values, we inserted the 2019 values. So we increased the base by about $2 million,
So then this is as amended,
as amended.
okay?
That's where that note goes.
That's where the note goes.
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Item 47 is a resolution determination of application for special use to establish alcoholic beverages Class A sales at an existing fuel station at 10537 West Greenfield.
Move to adopt.
Is that Class A?
Class A Bureau. Class A Bureau.
Okay, is that what the amendment on here is?
So the
Anybody know?
actual resolution doesn't distinguish between the licenses, and so there's no amendment necessary for the special use permit resolution. It just says alcohol license.
Somebody put on there as amended.
So in license and health, what happened was they only approved a Class A beer.
Right.
And so effectively, by approving this as written, it will only apply to any licenses issued,
Yeah,
which was only beer.
whatever they are. So it's not as amended, it's as adopted. Is there a motion to adopt?
I'll
Second.
second it.
And seconded by Stefanski. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Second that?
I know I'm not on the committee.
Who's the second?
I did.
Stefanski.
I know I'm not on the committee, I just wanted to make sure that if, they did show on their plan a portion, interior, on the interior where they would have, warm beer basically sitting there for sale. Is there something in the special use where we can say that that has to be locked up past 9 o'clock, or would that just be within the license?
Since the city has chosen to do a special use permit to impose regulations like that, it's not a bad idea to add that to the special use permit
So
as a condition.
if a member of the committee would be so inclined to add a condition that all,
Yeah, up to 9 PM. and
all beer and liquor to be
Must be
locked
locked
up
up.
after 9 o'clock.
I'll make a
What do you
motion to
refer
amend
all
it.
liquors? Let's be,
There's no liquor.
There's no liquor.
no
Beer
liquor.
only.
no
Beer.
liquor at all.
Yeah.
Beer, I mean,
Just beer.
because, I mean.
All beer must
we
be
gotta
locked up
careful how we
outside of
verbiage that,
Outside the
you know,
hours.
allowable state
and
hours.
so
or-
everything
Alcoholic
else.
beverages,
I mean, that's,
because you indicated it's cider as well.
The cider too.
So,
I just did.
then move to amend this. Is there a second?
I did second.
You second? I'm sorry. So moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And then as you're opposed to the amendment?
Oh, no.
Okay. Then on the resolution as amended, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
It's 4-1. And that is at amended.
I may ask Alderperson Reinke, so by voting no, I mean, you're voting no for the
They voted
Beer
against the resolution.
He's
license?
voting against the special use permit.
Oh, the special use.
Right, it has
Yes.
nothing to do with the license, it's the special use.
So the
permit.
special use you're voting against, right?
Yes.
Okay,
And then we have 49, which is the application be placed on file.
sure move.
Move to place it on file, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Stefanski, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 49 is an ordinance to amend various sections of the RMC for the short-term rentals. And this is as amended. John, what's the amendment on this? Because Marty's gonna ask me.
I'm sitting right here.
I'm not sure what we changed on that.
Version 2. There's version 1 and version 2. Version 1 is all crossed off, and you have version 2 in here, which is the way, what you had the hearing on tonight, but I don't know what changed from version 1.
I don't recall either, but version 2 is what we held the hearing on.
Version 2 is what we held a hearing on, so, okay.
Oh, I know. We didn't deal with parking in the first
Oh, the added
publication, so
parking
we had to
regulations?
add, we didn't publish that notice about the parking section. So we republished it, the whole ordinance,
Okay, so
including the
that's-
parking.
Is there a motion
So
for
move for
approval?
approval, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Vitale, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Stefanski. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 50 is the application along with 51, which is the, 50 is resolution, 51 is the application for special use for the daycare at 76 and Beecher.
Move to approve.
Moved by Barzak.
I'll second it.
Approval, seconded by Vitale. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigel.
if I could, I just wanted to reiterate my concerns about the 24-hour nature of this business. I'm just looking here on Google Earth. I was right. The nearest 24-hour business there is Pick and Save. And if you, I mean, this is just not a 24-hour neighborhood. I believe the manager made some sort of assertion about,
There's 2 gas stations up the block that are 24 hours.
those are 24 hours, 76th and Beecher? Or
No,
76th?
So is it Lincoln?
Lincoln, those are 24 hour?
No, the mobile's not.
The other one is.
I thought they're both closed.
When we leave here, they're dark.
They could have 24-hour pumps.
They might be self-service.
Okay, I've never been past them when it.
Yeah.
They might be self-service pumps, I guess. To me, that's,
Okay, all right.
but,
Whatever.
and I guess, I believe it was a manager made an assertion that at late night, it might not be that many people. And I guess if we could get that in the special use, I mean, I don't know what the, you know, I'm looking at the parking for this place. With the apartments upstairs, I mean, there's, and you're right, I'm not the parking guy. I think, I don't like parking minimums. But a daycare with people coming and going, employees there, I would hate to see 3 buses and 5 cars pulling up there at 2 AM, I guess, is what it is. What the impact that's gonna
The
have. on the
applicant
rest-
is here, correct?
Yes, yes.
How many, you have another facility, how many people, children do you have at night, third shift?
Right now, we don't have none at our other building, because our building isn't big enough. We can only do 25 to 30 kids. So we need a bigger building so we can add third shift, but a lot of people, a lot of parents is looking for third shift.
Okay, I don't understand that, because the capacity of the building doesn't have anything to do with third shift. I mean, that's somebody you can hold during the day, but at third shift, I mean, I'm guessing, what are you gonna have, 5 kids, 10 kids?
It depends. We don't know what the need is. So right now, we don't know.
And I understand where there's a need for third shift daycare, you know, I totally understand that.
We can't house the kids, so we're turning people away. That's why we're looking to get a new.
Yeah, and that's just gonna give you an opportunity to expand your business, which I understand, but, you know, that doesn't really, you don't have any on third shift now, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, so right now you have no third shift business?
No.
And where's your current
We can't
location?
house them.
Where's
We're
your current,
Walking on with Titania and Roosevelt.
okay, and
Why don't you come up over here?
I believe you also said that you need to apply for 24-hour status, something with the state of Wisconsin. Did you say that at that public?
Depending on how many kids, well, once we get open, we'll know from the area. Some of our kids from where we're at will be moving over with us. So I can't give you guys exact numbers. We're going off of the plan that's already set up for that building. The building is set up for 60 to 70 kids. So if we can get 60 to 70 kids, then we will be able to offer third shift. We'll be in a bigger center.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we limit it to first and second shift initially, and if you get to the point where you're gonna need a third shift, you come back and we'll consider changing this.
Okay. We could do that, because we
That's a
don't
great
know
idea, Tom.
how it's gonna be once we get there. We don't know what the business is gonna look like.
I'm a little concerned that right now you're not operating any third shift.
Nope, we can't.
And so that means you have no experience with that third shift.
No, we have experience. We don't have enough space.
I got that. So what are the hours, what are we gonna say the hours of operation limited to, like 6 AM to 10 PM?
What constitutes
Seven.
third shift?
What time do they usually come
Third
in?
shift, well, right now, we're open from 6 AM to 12 now.
Okay, 6 to 12?
6 to midnight?
Yeah, that takes care of second shift. If you get off work at 11 o'clock, gives you time to go pick your children up.
Alderman Stefanski?
Yeah, I know.
It's our neighborhood.
I have an issue with that. I live 2 blocks away, I have an issue with that.
Mr. Chair, I
Okay.
believe,
What's your suggestion?
10 o'clock at the latest?
I would go along with that.
How many children do you have on second shift now?
17.
17?
Mr. Chair.
How many tell?
The fact that is that, the timing, to me, I think if first and second should be at midnight, because most people, they work until 11 o'clock, let's be realistic. The fact that it's taverns in the past, maybe not as much now because we don't have as many taverns. What we used to have, people make more noise at midnight at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning than the kids, really. Let's be realistic.
Yeah, you got a tavern right across the
Yeah,
street.
by state law, the kids,
One down the block.
Yeah, so tavern make a more noise
You're right.
than have somebody pick up their child 11, 12 o'clock at night. Because that child, 11 o'clock at night, he'd be sleeping by
yeah,
then.
most kids who come in third shift do go right to sleep. After 7 o'clock, the kids cannot be outside. After 8 o'clock, parents have to come in and sign them out. Their parents don't want to sit in the daycare, so they're in and out.
Is there adequate parking with the apartments and the staff?
70?
No.
17.
No, she said.
No, the building,
Oh, that's.
that's where y'all zoning is. We didn't pick those numbers. That's what y'all have already. The building is approved already for
That's the legal
kids.
capacity. I don't know that I would have a problem with 70 daycare kids plus 10 employees.
Well, you don't know, so, yeah.
Capacity includes employees.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, Mr. Ponsky.
I am a little disturbed with putting this right in the middle of a residential area. Are there no places around the city that could handle this capacity that are more in a commercial area for this daycare center? I'm
There's
asking you.
lots of buildings.
Yeah. What's bringing them to this location and not something else?
I'm assuming it's price.
Actually, we like the building. It's big enough. We can house all our kids. It's more room, so we wanted to do more stuff that we can do. Our building now, we only got 3 rooms, so we want to have a resource room for the parents. We want to have a computer room. It's a lot of different things that we can do in that building. And then the price is good for us, but it's just a bigger building.
But what about a play area outside? I mean,
Play
that's,
area, it's a play area. That's where the little fencing is, and we decided that we're fixing the fence where the hole is at.
They meet the
And
legal
then
requirements for outdoor.
We also want to raise the fence, so we was thinking about raising the fence up too, so the kids' balls and stuff don't fly over. So we have been thinking about that as well.
How many children come by bus?
We wouldn't know until
Oh, you
the
don't know.
parents.
How many
Well, right now, how many kids we got now? Maybe 4 come by bus. But that's because their parents don't have cars. A lot of our teachers, well, we got 7 teachers, 3 drive. The other 4 come on the bus. So a lot of the busing will bring a lot of our parents, a lot of our staff.
Okay. So that's one of the reasons you like the locations on a bus line. That's understandable. Alderman Rowe.
So you own the buses
No, I
or the
don't.
vans, or how did,
We will be providing our own transportation, so yes.
okay, then when those are being used, where do those vans go?
They'll be parked in, either in the garage or in our parking space. We can probably fit 5 cars back there.
What's the pleasure of the committee? First
Well,
of all,
I'm gonna make a motion that the hours be from 6 AM till midnight.
I'll second it.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, amendment passes. And on the resolution as amended, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
4 to 1, it passes. I what? Yeah, 4 to 1. So it passes as amended. Then we have 52 and 53 on the agenda. This is application for special use for Anytime Fitness, 2200 block of Highway 100.
Move to approve.
Moved by
Second.
Mackey, seconded by Vitale. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Anything else to come before the committee?
Second.
In the next 5.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. We are adjourned. Advisory.
Yeah, thank heavens. Huh?
I'll try again, yeah, just, the hard part is going to be,
I don't know how you can do it.
yeah.
I don't know how you can
They
do
don't
it.
have enough parking there.
It's hard because I've got, everyone seems to have interests kind of diverging. So I'm trying to come up with something that will work for everyone. It's really
I
tough.
can say, no working on your car except oil changes,
Oh, you don't have it?
and drop it at that. And somebody's working under,
Want some-
tickets never been issued, ever.
There's another suggestion makes that was okay.
If you don't mind, sir.
People should register.
If you don't
It's
mind.
already ruled out. They have to
All
register
right, let's do
outside.
this.
Can't require registration of vehicles indoors.
Okay,
No, but that's good. thing.
advisory come to order. Number 74, resolution relative to 2020 census partnership.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 75, resolution relative to the creation of 2020 City of West Dallas
So moved.
Complete Count
Second.
Committee. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I gotta mark my own, I guess. So, who moved?
I did.
Tom? Stefanski?
Yep. On a complete count one, I did.
Okay. And Tom?
Tom, you did, you seconded
You were
that one,
second,
right?
right? How about the first one? Tom?
Who seconded that first one?
Who seconded the first one?
I think I did.
I did.
Voted me.
May?
Yep. He seconded it.
Thank you. My secretary left. All right. 76, notification of reappointments to the West Dallas Community Improvement Foundation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 78, appointment of Kimberly Cosby as a member of the West Dallas
We did
Police.
that one.
We did it.
Yes, that's right, we did it already.
77 we didn't do.
Okay, so So,
That's it?
adjourn. Okay.
No, number's number 77.
Rosalie. 77.
77, we acted on May 29th.
Oh, we did.
So,
What we,
Oh, yeah.
She was here.
it shouldn't be on there.
oh, all right.
It was an error.
Yeah, that's right, she was here. Yeah, that was in May.
Right. Yeah, we,
Oh, I thought so. I was wondering why it was here.
May 29th, we acted on that,
Why all these errors all of a sudden?
yes.
Yep, okay. Move we adjourn.
I'll
It's been
second.
moved and seconded.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thank you.
That's when I said, Romaine, you should meet Kale.
You know, I had it listed as this, representative